Hi, I'm Mary Crowley, and this is Arts and More. Today, I have as my guest Christine Holschuh, artist. She has an amazing life story, I think, and I've asked her to share it with you, as well as to share a number of her paintings. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Let's go back, way back in time, when you were a little girl, and you had some dreams of what you might be later in life.
Okay, so when I was quite young, I decided I wanted to either be a pianist or an artist. And I had a good example. My mother was she was an artist. So what that means is she didn't do any artwork, but she had artwork in the house that we found out that she had done. So I thought, you know, my mom can do it, I can do it, right? So my parents would not give me a piano, so I had to resort to crayons and paper and pencils and stuff like that.
And you did something with a shirt of your father's.
Oh yeah,
and
right.
a chair, right?
Right. So I loved creating artwork. I loved making things, and I also loved mixing potions together and experimenting with science. You know, it all kind of fit together with, you know, as one thing, kind of making things. And so I would get into trouble a lot because of that. You know, there was all kinds of moldy things growing underneath my bed.
Your father had a shirt that
yeah,
came back
he had
from the laundry?
Right, so he had his shirts laundered, and they came home and they had his name printed on the inside of the collar. And I had a pencil in my hand, and the shirt was sitting there, and I was maybe 4 years old, and I started writing on the shirt my father's name, big letters. And
in
to
other
me,
words,
it was
you
just
were
shapes.
drawing lines.
Yes.
Straight lines or squiggly lines.
Well, it happened to be circles because his name is Osgood, so lots of O's. I thought it was beautiful, you know, but my parents didn't think it was so beautiful. So I got into trouble with that. I was always etching drawings.
You
I
told
was
me a story about
artist.
a chair.
Yes, my mother's dining room chair. There was a pin on the table, and I started etching this little, it was my first landscape, you know, little mountains and trees etched into the varnish of the chair. And they weren't too happy about that one either, but.
Well, you said your mother encouraged you to draw. She gave you a
really
mirror.
Did. Yeah, she would, to keep me out of trouble, she would like give me a mirror and pencil and paper, and she'd say, look in the mirror and draw your picture, you know. Or my father would sit and draw with me when my mother was cooking. And so, yeah, and the
so
first
you remember doing that then?
Oh, yes. And I really remember, I remember the accolades, like my father saying, oh my gosh, her drawing is better than mine, or when they take me to art camp.
What was art camp?
Well, the youngest version that I remember was we were sculpting out of clay, and I made a head of a dog, you know.
Okay.
And I remember when my dad came to pick me up that the art teacher said to him, I think your daughter's got something here, you know, and it was like hearing adults say.
So you remember that?
I remember that. It left an impression on me, like, oh, I want to do this, and other people think I can.
Right.
You know, and so that was great. That was really good. And I have an image here of one of my paintings, which kind of goes back to the idea of either a pianist or an artist. So we can show the painting. There we go. And okay.
And this is reminiscent of decisions you made later when you decided to be an artist on a regular basis.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Well, I used to sneak over to my girlfriend's house. I didn't really sneak. I'd go over to my girlfriend's house, and she was taking piano lessons, so she would like try to teach me. But you know, it wasn't that effective. So,
all right,
you know.
so that's kind of a memory.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, did you go to art school?
No, I didn't. So I call myself a self-taught artist,
Right.
and what that means is basically, you know, I didn't have instructors so much, but I I did go to workshops, and I read a lot of books, and I watched videos, and I, tried to educate myself
Right.
about art. Took
Do you
some
want to come
classes.
back to the two of us now and leave the painting?
Well, or we could go to the next painting.
Okay.
So I didn't go to art school, but I did eventually go to some workshops.
But you did go to college, right?
I did go to college. I got a degree in education. Life had sort of intervened along the way, and
And what, can you tell us that part of the story? Because I think you decided that you would leave college before you got your bachelor's degree. Is that
yeah,
right?
I wanted to go to art school.
Right.
My parents knew that I was a bit of a flibbertigibbet, and so,
Okay.
I mean, I did well academically, but I had a lot of different interests, and I'm scatterbrained, and they wanted me to become a chemist, and or something.
chemist?
Yeah,
That
my
was not
mom.
a part of who you were.
Well, it's funny because
Right?
my mom, I love chemistry, but
Okay.
my mom would say, "Oh, art supplies are made out of chemistry."
All right.
That was her like justification for that. So I actually went to a number of different colleges, and I kept switching my degree.
But
And finally,
after you decided to leave college, then you and your first husband.
right. So I dropped out of college, and we went traveling around the country, and I ended up living on the farm, which is this large community in Tennessee. It was a very large hippie community.
Okay.
And so I lived there, and I learned how to work really hard because we farmed, we made our own food, we were all vegetarians, and we birthed our babies at home. We had a midwife service that extended beyond the farm and actually delivered babies for other people as well. I made bicycles. I worked in the book publishing company as an artist.
And you also taught, right?
And I taught.
In an unusual school for that time.
Yeah, so
this was the 70s, is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we built this school, and it was a solar school, so that was early.
Very early.
Yeah, and so I taught second grade. I would walk. We had a school bus because there was quite a distance between basically where the neighborhoods were and where the school was. So I would meet the kids, and they'd fill up the school bus, and I would drive to school, and then I'd teach, and then I'd drive the school
Okay,
bus
so
back.
you were a teacher. You didn't have necessarily a teaching certificate, but
No.
you were
Right.
the teacher.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like
Different ages?
kind of like my art career.
Okay.
Self-taught.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So then when I finally left the farm, I did go to Stevens College in Columbia, Missouri, and I got my teaching degree.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, do you want to show any more paintings
Yeah,
now?
let's move on to the next painting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So,
Want to say a little something about that?
yeah, this is my granddaughter. She was actually posing for me
Okay.
in at the Clarendon Gorge, and yeah, I have 7 grandkids, so they
And you
make
like
great
to
models.
paint your grandchildren, right?
I really do.
Yes.
Didn't have to be my grandkids, but
Okay.
they're ready
How about
models.
another painting?
Yeah.
Ah, look at the expression on her face.
Yeah.
She is
So this
joyfully
is all
stirring
about
or mixing something.
Yeah. Yeah. So I struggled with the colors on this one, and finally ended up putting this neutral background in, and it worked. So
It's wonderful.
yeah.
Okay, the next
Yeah.
one?
Okay. So now we can talk about transitioning.
Right.
Um,
After you were teaching in Tennessee, you lived in Burlington, Vermont for a while, right?
yes. Yes. I lived all over the country.
Okay.
Yeah. But I ended up
Is
in
that-
Burlington, Vermont. I was teaching there, and then I decided to quit teaching, and I taught environmental science, and I did a lot of work with VINS, the Vermont
Okay.
Institute of Natural Science, and I had gotten a grant from them for a program. So I just wanted to call them and tell them that I wasn't going to be teaching anymore, and they said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I'm going to be an artist."
Okay.
And they
And
said,
you
"Oh,
submitted,
gee."
you submitted something. The time is racing along.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
watching the clock.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, that was your first real success, right? You
Yeah.
submitted.
Well, so they were having this River Congress, and they were actually giving grants to artists
Okay.
to do something. And
Okay.
I said, yes, I'll do that. And that kind of catapulted me into the idea that I could actually do this thing.
So you started painting at that point.
I started painting. I started painting at that point, but I really
Huge.
couldn't, I did a bunch of different things. I just was kind of floundering around trying to find myself.
But then you found yourself because you discovered an artist whose work you loved.
Right.
Why don't you tell us about
Yeah.
her and then briefly about the workshop?
Okay, so.
And show some more of your paintings
yeah.
from time to time.
On the internet, I found Karen Jurek.
Right.
And she's an artist who lives in Atlanta. And she did the paintings of people, and especially like people looking at artwork or people, I don't know, just people doing things. And I saw her work and I was like, I can do that. I can do that kind of thing. And then I found out that she was teaching a workshop at the National Academy of Art in New York City. And so I went to this workshop. I knew nothing about oil paints. I had just been playing around with acrylics. Knew nothing about oil paints, but I got her list of supplies and I bought everything.
Right.
And I went to this week-long workshop in New York City.
And that changed your life, right?
Changed my life. I just took to it immediately. I loved it. And learned about the materials.
And you learned about making small paintings,
yeah,
right?
so she specializes in making very small
Right.
paintings. And so I was like, oh, small paintings, I can do that. Small
And the
paintings.
paintings that you're showing here, all of them are small paintings.
Yes, they are.
Right?
They're all like 12 by 12 or smaller.
Okay.
Yeah. And I still do some large pieces, but
Could we
but
put
not.
some more paintings up?
Yeah, so let's
Okay.
show the next painting.
Okay.
So this is an example of a person looking at their artwork. It happens to be Mariva Maleric, and this is her painting that she's looking
Right.
at. And so that's my interpretation of this idea of people looking at artwork.
And another painting?
Right. So this is a portrait of my sister. And so what I found I could do is I could use expressive brushwork. And
Right. Your brushwork is outstanding. You can see the brushes, but the whole thing comes together as a lively person.
And I also seem to have kind of a natural draw towards color. And if you look at this, you can see little bits of like red sticking out. Sometimes I'll first paint the
Right.
panels, was what I paint on, which is like a wooden panel. And I'll paint them like black, which Karen Jurek did, or red or some other color.
And you can see in the background the
yeah,
red
you can
showing
kind of
through.
see it peeking through.
Right.
And then here's
Look.
an example of a painting that I did. I found that I really love to do people moving, and
Yes.
so I hired a model and she posed for me.
And she obviously is in motion. The shadow
yeah,
makes it
right.
alive.
And then this one, I guess this one actually this one's a larger painting. It's quite big actually. I had forgotten about that. Right, and then I people would say, oh, you're really good at doing people. You're good at portraits and stuff. So I started doing portraits. This is my niece and her husband. I gave it to them as a wedding gift.
What a wonderful gift.
Yeah, and here's another
back.
example of just like it. How I feel about this painting is that it's kind of like a two-dimensional sculpture. That those are identifiable women, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're women, but it's more about like how they're constructed and how they're these forms in space. They're looking at a map of the museum. I said one
And you
thing.
can tell it's a museum.
Yeah, right. So they're there and they're trying to figure out where they're at in the museum and where they're going to go next. And I'm really drawn to this kind of groups of people, And if you notice, it's really pretty abstract. You know, like even though it looks like people, it's made up of these bits of shapes.
Right.
You know, so you can kind of forget that it's people and see. And I started learning about things like edges. So if you notice the middle woman, her shoulders kind of blend into the background. You know, it's good to have some choppy edges like I have, and then some that are just softer. And you know, I'm just learning about the technique of painting, you know, and style. And what I also stumbled across the Daily Painters movement, and yeah, and that really catapulted me into
Do you want to go to another painting?
So
a person in motion.
yes, I love this kind of thing. The muscles, I love the muscles.
Right.
But the
And
daily
the light and shadow.
Yeah.
Which makes the legs real.
Gives them form, yeah. So the Daily Painters movement was started by Dwayne Kaiser, and it just is like a group of painters, you know, decided that they were going to do like a small painting every day and post it online, social media. And so I learned about social media, and I started doing this, and I did it very diligently for at least 3 years, and then I sort of was like, okay, you know, I learned a lot. That's a lot of paintings.
And you told me that because you painted every day, you learned who you were, what you liked in terms of color and form and values and composition, and if you were to do it just once a week, you wouldn't have that kind of momentum.
Right. It's an education,
Right.
doing it every day.
Yeah.
And I think that that's true with any skill you're learning.
too.
You know, you just work at it, keep doing it, and you discover all these wonderful things,
Right.
you know, about it. And so that really helped me. And I still paint daily. I don't do necessarily a painting a day, you know, because I found that sometimes, you know, if you lose kind of your momentum a bit, it's sort of like, I got to do a painting
You have
today.
to take breaks.
Yes.
Yes.
So I allow myself to do that, and I allow myself to go back to other paintings that haven't been. I mean, you have successes and you have failures, and
Shall we see
Yeah.
another painting?
sure.
And this is a successful one.
Yes. This one's all about the light.
Yes, it is.
You know, again, the forms. You know, it's my granddaughter's, but it's
Models
about
again.
about the lights. Yeah. And so, and then portraits. You know, do portraits. And yeah, so I've had, you know, some paintings that I've done are just really, they just flow out of you. It's like magic. And I know that there's books written about, you know, this, that it's like magic, you know, it just flows through you, you know,
Right.
the inspiration is there.
You use the
and-
words in the zone when we
in
were
the
talking.
zone, you know, and it's amazing. And I always feel like, wow, where did that come from? You know,
Almost
you know,
from outside yourself.
yeah,
Inspiration.
and it just kind of flowed through me, and it just worked. And then sometimes I just beat myself up the entire time. It's like, you know, people say, "Oh, painting, that must be so much fun," and I'm like, "Oh, but if you only knew," you know. It's like I mean, moment to moment, it's like and just
On
fighting
some
it.
days, not every day.
No. And if you do, like if you do 100 paintings and you end up with 10 really good ones,
Right.
that's pretty amazing.
Right.
You know.
If you're doing it every day.
And then you take those other ones and you either, you know.
Well, you said you have a stack of rejects.
I do. I have a stack of rejects that I pull out every now and then, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I know what I can do, and other times I'm like, oh, I know what I can do. I can just completely wipe this out, you
Right,
know, and
right.
just
Exactly.
have you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, there's books written. People talk about it. The big fear in doing something that you really want to do, but you're so afraid you're going to fail, you know. And there's like, that's so true with art.
But you went to a workshop, and at that workshop, you learned the tools that you have at your disposal today, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Can you just talk a little bit about what you did in the workshop?
Okay.
Because I think that's fascinating.
Yeah. So
This was a life changer,
right.
right?
Yes. So Karen sort of believes that, hey, these paint companies have produced all these fabulous paints. Why sweat it? You know. So
Right.
she's like had us buy 50 tubes of paint.
50.
50, yeah.
You
and-
said you scraped your pennies together.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this was a big investment.
And
for
not
me.
only did you have to buy the art materials, you had to buy a camera.
Yeah, I had to buy a camera. That was part of it. And, you know, staying in New York City is not
Right,
cheap.
right.
And the workshop was
And so what was a
expensive.
day like?
So we would meet at the studio. Karen would do a demonstration, and then we would take the photos that we had taken and, you know, pick one, and we'd each paint our own photo, right?
Okay.
And then she would come around and she would critique it. And then in the afternoons, we would go out into the city, to the museums, to the streets, and just photograph. And I learned.
So you became conversant with what you liked and what you didn't like.
Yeah, I mean, just the photography part of it was just
Right,
really
right.
fascinating, you know? And so, yeah, and so then I left that, found out about the Daily Painters, you know, started writing a blog and putting, you know, my work up for people to see.
And so you told me that you were able to look at the work of artists around the country and around the world and connect with them.
Yes. Plus,
Which
I
is-
met all these
So you had a
fabulous...
community of artists.
Right, and I met all these fabulous artists in this workshop, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then I did go to some other workshops too, and so now it's like I currently communicate with a lot of artists around the country, many
Right.
of them who I've met, and, you know, we've become friends.
Right.
And, you know, and
So
some
you-
right here
so
too.
you do art, but I love the fact that your mornings are different from your afternoons. You want to mention that and maybe show a few paintings at the
Oh,
same time?
yeah, we
I
have
don't want
more.
any of the paintings to get
Okay.
forgotten.
So, right, it's another portrait of 3 kids. And so I spend my mornings exercising,
All right.
you know, and then I come home and I go to my studio, put on the music, clean
And
up a
that's
little
your
bit.
afternoon.
My afternoons are painting.
Right.
Yeah, so I have a
So
discipline.
you have a wonderful routine.
Yes, it's a routine, it's a discipline. You know, I know that I have to do these steps to get there, and so I, you know, I don't talk
Oh.
myself out of it. And yeah,
And so here are people doing things.
right. And I don't know if you can tell, but I love the beach. I love
Yes.
I love recreational
And you-
sports. I love
And you love children and
I
your
love
grandchildren.
children, yeah, and I love people in motion. Okay.
Okay, this is different from all the rest.
Yeah.
Those cheeks.
I know. I just this right. I don't know. I love this one. I did a series of 3 babies in carts in grocery stores and
Ah.
stuff. When I did this one, I don't know. I got really, for some reason.
Well, you did say that sometimes you repeat your subject.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I met Carol Marine. We talked about her, and she wrote a book called Daily Painting, and she paints she does a lot of different things, but she always comes back to still lifes. I was not interested in painting still lifes until I met her, and I realized a still life, you know, is something that doesn't move, so you can just sit there and look at it and understand the shadows and the
Right.
shapes, and it, you know. Because ultimately, you know, we think about, okay, I painted a baby. Well, I didn't paint a baby, you know. I mean, babies don't allow you to paint them, but well, I guess some of them do. But you don't paint a baby. You paint shapes and values and
Right.
composition and color. I mean, that's what you're painting. You're
Right.
painting, as my mother would say, chemistry,
Okay.
you know. And so, yeah, right. So that is very helpful, actually, as a painter, that, you know, if you distance yourself from the subject and think of it as just being shapes and
Yes,
values.
yes.
You can paint anything. I mean, people always say, oh, wow, you paint portraits, you paint people, that's the hardest thing, you know. It's really not. I mean, it does take some work to get to where you can do it without struggling, but
Yeah, but you're at the point where you can see. You can see the relationships between the forehead, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the width of the face, everything.
right, I understand where things go.
Right.
You know, and there's a big difference between painting an old person and painting a young person.
I'm
you
sure
know?
there is.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
really is. For one thing, babies don't really have a whole lot of definition.
Okay.
You know, and so it can come out really flat. But if you look at this one, you can see, if you look closely, you can see, you know, like I put really warm colors on the right side of the face and really cool colors on the left side of the face, meaning like a little bit of violet in there as a cool color, whereas there's more orange and red on the right side, and it gives form to that. And that's what you learn by just doing,
Right.
doing.
And you
doing
can
it
see
a
where the
lot.
light is coming from.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be. I mean, it's not that I can't paint an aisle with groceries on it, but you know, there's something really beautiful about just like suggesting
Yes,
what it is.
yes.
And it's just, you know, again, just shapes and values, and it's not too distracting. And but I mean, I think anybody could look at that and realize it's a grocery cart with a baby in it.
All right,
Yeah.
let's go out talking about the art you created for the hospital.
Here it is.
There it is.
Yes. Okay, so the city did, you know, you might have to fill in here with details, but there was this project, and
It was a street art project.
yeah, street art, and there was a bunch of artists that were invited to submit details. Anyway, Rutland Regional bought my heart,
Right.
and the theme was the heart of Rutland. Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah,
The heart of Rutland.
Yeah.
And so I like asked myself, what is the heart of Rutland? And I thought community. So that was my idea. And then since the heart was the theme, I did hands in the shape of a heart. And actually, there's another different scene on the other side, but it goes along with this. And yeah, so they liked it, and they put it right in front of the hospital, which I'm very honored to be there. And you can see that the background is sort of a typical view of the mountains
Right.
behind the hospital.
And it seems to be lasting. It was coated with what cars are coated
yeah,
with. I don't know the name of it.
Right, it
but
was
it's-
automotive shellac that's on it, and it's, you
And
know,
it's lasted.
gorgeous, really.
It
really,
is. It still
held
looks
up
fantastic.
really well,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Right. So, yeah, so that's great. And I just want to go back to one thing.
Sure.
Because when you said that now I can see, I want to say that my mother taught me how to see,
Uh-huh.
you know, and I really value that. Like, she was always saying, oh, look at the way the light's hitting that.
Okay.
Look at the shape of
All right.
this. And, you know, she really taught me how to really look and see things. And that's the heart of being able to
Yes.
paint or draw.
It is to slow down and to
Yeah.
see.
Or even
You-
write poetry, you know, to
Right.
be able to see that truth, you know.
Mhm.
So I just want to give my mother a...
Well, she did paint, didn't she?
Yeah,
Yes.
and so once we left home, she took up painting, and she was like a ferocious painter.
Right.
You know.
have some of her work in your house.
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
quite a bit actually. And
Right.
but she like painted. But she didn't ever try to sell her work or anything. She just gave it away. And beautiful landscape painter.
Yes.
You know, beautiful.
Yes.
So she was a great, you know.
She was an inspiration.
And-
She was essentially an artist.
She was very much an artist.
A home
you know.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, she got accolades for it. She was in the newspaper and stuff like that. But, you know, she just didn't sell her, well, a few pieces, but not much. But before she passed away, she and I were able to go to a professional workshop together.
That's great.
That was a dream come true. So that was great.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. You are living your dream, I think,
Yeah.
as an artist.
Yes.
Christine Osgood Holshoe.
You got it. Thank you, Mary. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome.